have a negotiation presentation. I have a building a boutique brand presentation. Um, and there's a lot of crossover into breaking into luxury, but I don't actually have a specific breaking into luxury presentation with slides, because this is something that I actually talk about so much. I've, the first family reunion I ever went to, I was just mentioning, the head of the luxury division asked me to sit on the luxury panel and speak to tons of people about how to break into luxury. And I was mentioning that the first thing that I said was, much maybe to the chagrin of the head of the luxury division, was don't have an exclusively luxury business. Luxury should be a component of your business, unless you're absolutely only in that kind of circle where like all your friends are billionaires, all your friends have private jets. You don't want to be pigeonholed in that kind of business. A, it's a very expensive business to be in. B, it takes much longer for those properties to sell, and it's less recession proof in the sense that luxury buyers don't always buy because they need to. They don't even necessarily buy because they want to. Oftentimes they buy because they see something and they're like, you know what, I like that. So when markets are changing, when we're shifting, the people that are losing their jobs oftentimes have to sell. People that are getting transferred have to sell. Very infrequently does the CEO or the CFO of a company get transferred. So those people, their moves are less predictable. Their time frame is less predictable. I've had two billionaire clients. One of my clients, billionaire client, he lives in Chicago. He has Palm Beach as his second home, and New York City was his third home. I sold him a place. Actually wound up selling that place from him to Daniel Radcliffe. But the story about his purchase was he reached out to me about 2 years before we put that place on the market and before he bought the next place. And he said, Seth, I really want to be in this building, Superior Inc. I want to be in this price point. And nothing came on the market. So periodically I would send him something, we'd continue the conversation, but it was 2 years before something that piqued his interest came on the market. So you need to have a diverse business, especially with luxury. And this is the case with any business in real estate. You need to be a resource. You need to be an advisor. If you're pushing people to do things, it very rarely works out in your favor. But especially with high net worth people, they don't like to be pushed around. They don't want to feel pressure. Basically, like when you go to the Ritz-Carlton or you go to the Four Seasons, what do? They try to take the pressure off of you. They try to make you feel more comfortable. You've got to think about the level of service that they're accustomed to in every other aspect of their life, because they've got great BS detectors and they're not going to stand for it. I say this all the time. You have to have lots of balls in the air, meaning like you have to have so many conversations with people that you don't put the pressure on the few. Because if you're putting pressure on people, you're saying, oh, you got to buy now, you got to buy now. Oh, it's time to sell, it's time to sell. People don't like that. So if you're giving good advice to 100 people, there's more opportunity for 20 of them to want to transact than if you have 20 people that you're pressuring. You're going to push those people away. So, it comes down to lead generation, but lead generation is really different in luxury versus the regular aspects of the market. Katie, do you want to mute Ella? I'm hearing some background stuff.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Cool, thanks. So before I get into like how to build that business, how to get those clients, one of the things that I always want to talk about is don't rush to get to where you think you should be. Be the master of where you are. We started this conversation before, like if you're young, new to the business, buyers are the lower hanging fruit. Buyers are the seeds that you plant for future business. They stay in the community, they advocate for you. It's the same thing with luxury. I started in 2002, 2003, 2004, working with luxury buyers because of a couple people that I knew who had access to those people. I didn't have a luxury listing probably until 2007. It took me about 5 years to get a luxury listing. That didn't mean that I didn't have luxury clientele. It was just the seeds that I put in first were the luxury buyers. And then when they came of age and they started buying their second homes or getting married and moving out of the city, that's when I got my first luxury inventory. So, you know, buyers lead to sellers, sellers lead to luxury listings, because if you do well in a building or a neighborhood, you can circle prospect around that. You can't just cold call. I mean, you can. My experience is you can't successfully cold call or cold market to luxury sellers. It doesn't work as well because they know somebody who knows somebody, and they're less likely to use an accountant that cold called them, an attorney that cold called them. So you have to have an organic, natural means to get into that group. That doesn't mean that if you have an opportunity, you know, and you're new, you shouldn't compete for it. Of course you should. But what a lot of people in my market center do is if they have a luxury opportunity, I can think of like 5 or 6 just in the past 6 months, where somebody had a big listing opportunity and they said, Seth, you know, you've sold hundreds of millions of dollars of properties. You've had $18 million listings. You've done $10, $11 million, $7 million sales. I haven't. Would you work with me? So I would recommend that one of the ways to break into luxury is to minimize the risk of not getting your opportunities by at first partnering with somebody. You don't want to do that forever unless you've got a dream team. You find somebody that works really well together, you know, keep doing it. But if you're just using somebody to help get you into that arena, you know, it's a win-win. They're obviously getting half of an amazing listing opportunity, and you're getting probably 20 times the chance of getting the deal. So, you know, once you sort of get in, and, you know, I will mention that my luxury business at this point, some of it certainly is because of a vertical market. I get into a building, and I think I was telling the story when I taught negotiation the other day, or a couple weeks ago to you guys. I had an $18 million listing and a $400,000 listing at the same time. The $18 million listing had been on the market for a couple months. The $400,000 listing was brand new. I always do my first open houses, the first 2 myself, if I can. From that, I wound up selling that apartment, getting a much more expensive listing in the building because I was already in the building. And one of the fathers who came with their first time home buying son to the apartment wound up giving me an $8 million listing. So there's opportunities from your business to interact with people that may have higher price point properties. But I will say that about 75, 80% of my luxury business has come from 3 people. And this is 18 years. The majority of my luxury business has come from 3 people. And that's excluding broker referrals. So I'll say 4 streams. My friend Sumesh, who I met in 2002, connected to a really great network of high net worth affluent Indian community that's, you know, from their diverse geography. They're in Dubai, they're in Africa, they're in London, they're in California, they're in New York. And he brought me into that. And through him, a good percent of my high net worth clientele has come through that. So one of the things that I always want to say is you've got to be the person that they want to refer to their friends. Net worth people love to use each other's resources. Like they all use the same divorce attorney. They use the same accountant. They use the same real estate agent. They use the same concierge services. So the goal is to become the real estate agent for a group of people. It's different than a regular, middle of the market stuff, because middle of the market stuff, certainly you want the referrals, but you want to keep growing. You want to have more and more conversations. This is hyper depth of relationship. Through my buddy Sumesh, I started going to Indian weddings. Been to Indian weddings 3 times in India, once in Dubai, once in Thailand, once in Singapore, once in Mauritius in Africa, just really all over the place. And I'm not saying that you need to do all that because it's very expensive. This happened because I was getting $5 million businesses from this group of people that I was able to reinvest some of that money into deepening the relationships. So, you've got to become part of their universe, their ecosystem, but don't buy your way in, even though I just talked about something that was pretty expensive. That was not my first step into getting into the group. First, what I did was I'd go to their parties. Instead of hanging out with my loser friends, I was hanging out with his high net worth friends. And they became my friends. And I'm kidding. I don't have a bunch of loser friends, but compared to his group, it seemed that way. They were all hedge fund managers, partners of private equity firms, and these were guys in their 20s and early 30s. And I'd go out to dinner with them, and I've actually spoken on luxury panels where people were surprised that I said this. I never offered to pick up a tab, no matter what. I'd buy a drink at a bar, but I didn't want to buy my way into the group because I felt like that seemed overly salesy, overly desperate. Nobody else was picking up the entire tab for a bottle at a restaurant or this or that. So why would I do it? So you're not luxury buyers or high net worth people. Don't try to keep up with them. Be authentic. I like to drink wine, but I don't know a tremendous amount about it. I went to one of my friends, private equity guy, got me into Donna Karen's. She had a party at her apartment in the West Village about 10 years ago, and it was super high-end wine. They were pouring like $10,000 bottles of wine, and the people that were there were all at least $50 million net worth. And, they were pouring glasses of wine and champagne that were $1,000 each, and they were talking about it. And very quickly, I realized that I could not talk to them on this level about wine. Was it a bad experience? No, but it wasn't something where I was going to gain, a deepened relationship because of being able to talk about wine. I'm very into art. A lot of my friends are art gallerists, art curators. So I go to a lot of art openings. You know what I do? I sponsor the wine. So that way I'm able to, brand myself, present myself, but it's also something that I can talk about. So I'm very happy looking at a painting or, a photograph and talking about it with somebody. Or I'm very comfortable talking about travel because I love to travel. I actually was recently reached out to by one of my first clients, and she actually bought a luxury piece of real estate in early 2000s. And I remember I knew nothing about real estate. I had never bought a piece of property before. I had only rented. I had taken a class that basically didn't talk about New York City real estate at all. And, they say fake it till you make it. I mean, I was really a fish out of water. I didn't know much. I had, maybe been out of my real estate class for 2 months. And I did an open house for a senior agent in my office. It was actually a pretty high priced property, but I wore a suit. I had a nice short haircut. I looked presentable. He was like, "Can you do the open house for me?" And I did. And this woman and I hit it off. We're driving around in cabs, properties, and she liked to travel. So we kept talking about places that we'd been, about, this country, this place, that. And I was able to connect with her on something that we had a commonality on. So, definitely, make connections with, things that are organic. If you like to golf, high net worth people like to golf. High net worth people like restaurants. High net worth people like entertainment, whether it's, theater or whatever it is. Find a group of people that share your interest. Like, I don't go to wine events. It doesn't work for me. But I do go to art openings. I do go to cultural events, in the city that involve music, things like that. So, where do high net worth people hang out? They also have a lot of philanthropic endeavors. They do a lot of charity. Um, if you don't have money to invest in charity, volunteer. Be in the places that are authentic to them and have it be something that's authentic to you. I, as a team, our real estate business, we give a portion of every commission to a charity, and we try to get involved in that actual charity instead of just, giving money. And we meet incredibly wealthy people through that. And that's not the reason we do it, but it doesn't hurt. One of the things that's been big for me since coming over to Keller Williams was, the luxury division of Keller Williams. Obviously, like any of the organizations, the affiliations here, it costs money, but that money is nothing compared to the amount of referrals that I've gotten from it, the relationships that I've built. So earlier I was mentioning that my partner and I, we have a $65 million listing opportunity right now. We've been speaking to the seller, and I got this referral through somebody in the luxury division. And then the other thing, I called up Leslie Akers, the head of luxury, and I was on the phone with her for a while, was telling her about this. And I was able to get every current listing over $20 million that Keller Williams is representing. So we're talking about breaking into luxury. When you're breaking into luxury, that means you don't have a history of working in luxury. So, if you've ever heard me speak about my negotiation or any aspect of my business, I tell stories. It takes the pressure off people. You're not saying you need to do this. You're not saying I'm the best. You're saying, this is what happened when a seller listened to the advice of staging. This is what success happened when we did this, when we did this. So you're able to tell stories that promote how good you are in the business, or, stories of how good your market center is. So if you've never done, think about, this is you, and then outside of you is the market center, outside of that is the region, outside of that is the company. So, I've had my highest price listing is 18 million that I've ever had. We're going after a $65 million listing. There's plenty of agents in New York City, not plenty, but let's say there's 50 agents in New York City that work in that price point. Should I throw the towel in and not compete for the listing? No. And this is something to do when you're breaking into luxury. Talk about, I have my database, but I'm connected to 3,000 of the top luxury agents in the country and the world through the Keller Williams luxury division. Or for you can say through Keller Williams if you're not part of the luxury division. And I said, now I've got 3,000 people's databases working for you, as opposed to if you just hire a local, luxury agent, they're doing what everybody else is doing. They're using their database. But now luxury buyers don't often only buy where they are. You can have somebody in, Idaho, in one of the beautiful ski towns, who happens to look at somebody's website and sees it $65 million listing in New York. So it's about showing the interconnectivity. If you don't have a ton of experience in luxury, talk about the current listing inventory that Keller Williams has. I can get you guys that list if you want. Every listing above $20 million right now. Not that $20 million might not be the price point that makes sense, but you can always do this. You can get the reports. It gives you credibility also. The luxury division, like I have that on all my marketing materials, things like that. But again, that's not necessarily something you might do when you're breaking in. Once you've established a luxury business, you can go back to that. I also think that with luxury, a big thing is to have a personal brand. So I'll show you a couple things. This is from a different presentation, but I think it's a consistent brand. And, we have a PR person that we pay out of pocket. I would recommend, if if you don't have a budget for that, get together with 4 or 5 people, get a PR person. I'm in a different article in New York City or in a national publication. I've been on the American Express website, and we spend $1,000 a month. I mean, it's not a huge amount. But if you split that with 4 people, you're spending $250 a month, and you can find a PR person to get you into publications. At first, it might just be a comment or a listing, but eventually they'll come to you as a source for different for different articles and different stories. So our branding is pretty consistent throughout all of our stuff. Whether it's our just solds, whether it's our our website, which we're actually revamping as we speak. And we highlight our success. We always market within a building or within a neighborhood. But this is the luxury division, which I always lead with when we're talking to luxury people. And even if you're not part of the luxury division, talk about Keller Williams luxury division. Get the stats. We have a 3,000 person luxury division. That is, most companies don't even have a luxury division. So when you're building your brand, I'll just read off a couple big things that I believe are key to having a professional brand. Brand within the brand, to make yourself local and authentic. So Keller Williams is a huge brand, but it doesn't always, to sellers and to buyers, it might not feel local. So that's why we created the Levin team brand, and we used the Keller Williams as, like, we're powered by Keller Williams, we're powered by the luxury division, but we're the local boutique within Keller Williams. Consistent throughout all platforms, professional and sophisticated, and your public appearances. Like, anytime I this is huge for luxury. I don't know if this is in every market, but I wear a shirt and a blazer every single day, because I never know who I'm going to bump into, while I'm showing an apartment, while I'm running around the city, or I've been in the business for 18 years. Sometimes my phone rings and someone says, "Seth, I know it's last minute, but can you come over and look at my place? We've been talking about selling, and my schedule," which is true for a lot of luxury sellers, "my schedule is crazy. I have 10 minutes today, or I could fit you in for 20 minutes today. Can you come over?" I don't have to run home and put on, big boy clothes because I wear them every day. And just be prepared to talk about real estate anywhere you go. I mean, people, you shouldn't have to. You should know enough, have enough research, enough data points, to be able to speak the language of real estate intelligently, because a high net worth person, they speak finance language typically. So have the language of the data analysis of real estate, some speaking points, market polls, price per square foot, days on market, supply, demand. Have some of that stuff just ready to rattle off. Like I mentioned before, community involvement, volunteering is free. And then customer service, professionalism, communication, that's your brand. So I heard somebody speak recently, and he actually said something that really stood out to me. So if you don't have an admin, then you're doing this role. If you do have an admin, you have to train your admin to be at the level of service that the high-end buyer is expecting. Your admin is your concierge to the client. So they really need, you really need to train them on what a person who's in this, price point would be accustomed to. And then, sorry, hold on one second. So, again, getting into the news is big, especially for a luxury buyer, luxury seller, if you can show them that you've been in the New York Times or the Boston Herald, Boston Globe, whatever it is, that's have that in your pitch, and it's very impressive. Again, make luxury part of your business, not your entire business. Um, it's not recession proof to just be in luxury. But I use the same photographer, the same listing presentation, the same marketing materials for a $400,000 listing as I do for a $10 million listing, because you never know who's going to see your $400,000 or $200,000 listing. First of all, you'll sell it much quicker, because when people are looking at a bunch of $200,000 listing photos and they're not great, and then they see yours, of course they're going to look at yours. Your lower end, middle end seller is never going to complain that you're using too nice of marketing materials for them. So it's your business card. Let's say you're in a condo building and there's a $200,000 unit in that building, but there's also a $2 million listing in that building. The $2 million person comes down to your $200,000 listing, and they see incredible marketing materials, incredible knowledge of the building, incredible photography. They're like, this person takes this $200,000 listing this seriously. I wonder what they'll do for mine. And if they came in and they're like, oh, it's just another $200,000 listing agent, they're never going to have the conversation with you. But when they see your marketing materials are at the level that they would expect for theirs, they're going to engage with you. So, this is important. Like we have a PR person. We also use professional copywriting. I think I'm a very good writer. I love writing, but until we started giving it to a professional copywriter to look at, I realized I'm not great at it. I didn't go to school for it. I'm good, but I'm not great. We use the best photographer and speaking engagements. This is what I'm doing today. Any chance you get to speak, if you're at a parent teacher conference, speak up, get known. People in your community might not know who you are. So use any opportunity as an opportunity to speak up. Don't try to fake your way into luxury. It just doesn't work. You've got to be authentic. And, I can't stress it enough. If you get in with a group of people, it spreads like wildfire. It's really incredible. Then long term, you're going to get brought into their events. And, that's when you really start to get a lot of traction, is once you start to get invited to the events that high net worth people are in. But unless you're born into that circle, you don't just get to jump into it. So it's speaking up, it's getting PR, it's going to events that high net worth people would attend, art openings, wine tastings, high brow entertainment. In New York City, it could be or in Boston, it could be, something that involves, an orchestra, an art opening. Whatever, but it's got to be authentic to you. I think is the biggest thing. And then high net worth people, like we talked about before, they don't like pressure. So once you're working with them, you can't go up and down emotionally with the transaction. I always say, you have to be the dock, the market, the broker, all the stuff going on in the transaction. That's the tide going up and down. Your client is the boat, and you need to keep them anchored, tied to your dock, and be calm. It never goes well, especially with high net worth people, if you're putting stress into their life. Your job has to be to take stress off of them. Katie, do you have any questions that you want to chime in on? Or anybody have anything in the chat?
No, I think one of the really important things that you were talking about is I can turn my video back on. Is making this relatable for yourself. Like you said, you don't know a bunch about wine, but you know a lot about art. So you can sponsor the wine at an art event,
Exactly.
so it's somewhere where you're comfortable and they're comfortable. And then I teach a lot of disc profiles, and that's one of the things is that like high Ds want to work with other high Ds, right? So people usually want to work with somebody who's on the same level as them. And so I
Mhm.
think that by doing that, it looks like you're on the same level as them because you're associated with the wine, which is what they like or they're into or they take an interest
Mhm.
in. And you're not faking that you're into it, but you're just getting on their level and it's an in. So I think that there's a lot of really creative solutions like that where
Yeah,
both of you are comfortable and you still get to be an expert.
exactly. And, so because I have a lot of ins with art, because I have an interest in art, we not only, we're in Manhattan, we're in blue chip Brooklyn, but we've also, to further recession proof our business, we've ventured out into Queens and Nassau County, Long Island, which is the county that's closer to the city. And one of our first listings in Long Island was a $5 million house that had been on the market with two other brokers for a cool 600 days. And, and we took it over. We didn't lower the price. What we did was we talked to a company or a business in New York City that had really high-end textile art. And we brought a bunch of their stuff into this house and kind of used it as a showroom. And we actually sold this property in less than 2 months for, I think, 1 or 2% under ask. Because
two
luxury,
months
under 2 months, it had been on the market for 600 days with
after 600 days. Oh my
200 agents, two other agents. And it was because we got a new crop of people into the property. Again, luxury buyers don't always know that they're in the market until they see something because they have options. They don't, need to buy tomorrow. They don't need to sell today. Sometimes it takes them seeing something before they decide that they want to buy or that they want to sell. So we got somebody in who came to look at the textile art and then wound up wanting the house. So, it's all about tying the stuff together with luxury. I know I'm saying a lot of the same stuff, but there's just a few things to really do to break into luxury. It's making relationships, and it's not like in the regular parts of the market where you're trying to get a million contacts. Like that's the goal. It's a million contacts. Never stop making more contacts. Hey, what's up, Dan? It's about deep contacts, and it's about finding one or two people that are willing to advocate for you. And hopefully those people, well, if they're high net worth people, they tend to have really deep, really wealthy relationships. So, when I'm talking to people down in Florida, one of the ways that they get into luxury is through like a country club or a country club community that they live in. They might not live in so a lot of these communities down in Florida, they have the $400,000 house, the $1 million house, the $10 million house, all in the same community. So a lot of my real estate friends down there have joined communities that have higher end homes so that they're breaking in, they're meeting people. But in the absence of that, for me, it was somebody who went to college with my brother. This guy, Saul, he's given me $2 billion clients. And you know what? We share a taste in music. So what have I done over the last 20 years? I take him to concerts. I deepen that relationship. We both ski. We go skiing together. I've deepened that relationship. Now he's my friend and he's my advocate, but he wasn't my friend. He just had a super high net worth group of people. He gave me a referral. He bought a property for me. And I understood, and this is not, me exploiting the relationship. I genuinely like him. It doesn't work if it's not authentic because again, especially these high net worth people have the biggest BS detectors. They know if you're not being genuine. They know if you're trying to fake your way in. So him and I, we shared music, we shared skiing, we deepened that relationship. He's given me, it's got to be $80 million worth of business over 18 years. It's got to be something like that. I've
wow.
never quantified it, but I probably should. It's probably 75, $80 million worth of business. And, I've gone to, I buy him concert tickets because, the way to this guy's heart is music. He loves music. I take him to concerts. It's not expensive. but it's something that's genuine to him. He belongs to a golf course up in Chappaqua, New York, right? Where the Clintons live, high net worth area. I take him to concerts. He takes me to his country club to golf. He's introduced me to people that have bought apartments in New York City. So I mean, like I always say this. I think, and I'm totally taking out the Keller Williams referral thing, because that's, I just got a $5 million and a $4 million referral from Keller Williams Universe luxury division just in the last couple of weeks. But my organic business that's from my relationships outside of the real estate world, 75% of my luxury business has come from 3 people. So, I mean, again, it's not a machine gun, it's a sniper. When you're working with the lower hanging fruit, the buyers, the lower priced sellers, that's sometimes a machine gun. You're trying to get 1 million people that you put in your funnel, and you're nurturing, and the nurturers, because these are, so many nurturers, they're not as deep, they're not as personal. With luxury, it's really deep, it's really personal, and it's not it's not as much of a numbers game. It's about a depth game, and just find if you're lucky enough, you can get 1, 2, 3 groups that have some kind of commonality with you. I'm not gonna break into a group that is a philosophy club. I mean, I think I'm a relatively smart person, but I'm not like breaking into I'm trying to break into a group of people that sits around and talks about philosophy books. That's not going to be me. But somebody who wants to talk about golf, somebody who wants to talk about travel, somebody who wants to talk about art, somebody who wants to talk about the best restaurants in New York City, that works for me. So, I mean, it's got to be authentic. Like I said before, charity can be expensive, but it can also be free if you are on the volunteer side. So, when you get associated, don't get associated with 30 organizations that you see once and then you move on to the next one. Find something that speaks to you. If it's environmental education with inner city kids, which is something I've done, that really spoke to me. I didn't do it once. I did it once a week. They're things that whatever's, really authentic to you. And again, this is not like my negotiation where I'm giving you rapid fire 600 things. This is like, these are your things to do. Get your name out there in the community. I do think having a PR person is great, and it could be inexpensive. Use the high level marketing for everything, because you never know who's going to come in. But for the most part, it's about developing, really deep relationships. And then you got to know your stuff. In any aspect of real estate, you got to know your stuff. But the $200,000 seller doesn't know the financial markets the way the $10 million seller does. So I'm not a finance person. I went to college for environmental policy, and I become a finance person from reading from, what do high net worth people read? They read The Economist, they read the Wall Street Journal, they read Bloomberg. Check those things out, just have a couple things that, you can speak to, that are things that they find important. And then, deepen those relationships, go to the dinners, go to the parties. Don't try to buy your way in. It just doesn't work. Any other questions, comments, jokes?
Dan, you joined late. What questions do you have?
No, this is not the first time I've heard Seth talk about this.
I know.
I think
it's
finally I'm starting to get into a little bit of the luxury market, and it's really coming from what you're talking about, that just making the connections and having them be genuine, and not expecting anything from it. My financial advisor has given me 2. They're making millions of dollars, and I'm just genuine to them, and we're friends now. We're texting each other about stupid stuff and Corona jokes and whatever else that's going on. And it's again, it's like the guy that you go skiing with. we have a commonality we've been talking about, and it's it's great.
100%. Is that Taylor? Is that your buddy Taylor?
Yeah. So I've let my guard down as a professional and become more human. And as our relationship's grown and it's become, more of a friendship, with him understanding that I am a professional and I know my stuff.
Yep. So that's the thing. I was actually on a luxury panel right before, like a couple days before we got locked down. And it was an agent from Connecticut. It was an agent from Maine, a couple other Northeast, high-end luxury agents. And, it came down to, I was joking that, they were like, how do you break into luxury? I was like, we're a pocket square. I was kidding, but I do dress for success. Like I, have always worn, outside of seeing me on my couch. Have either of you guys ever seen me not in a suit or at least a blazer? Like that's what I do. And I don't think that you have to do that, but it's something that I do because I'm showing a level of professionalism because I wind up being a goofy guy. I tell jokes. I'm not trying to be too serious. So I have the market knowledge and I dress seriously so that I can act like myself. If I dressed in jeans and a t-shirt and then act goofy and just told jokes, it might not have the same thing. So it's like, to Dan's point, which I think is a great point, is you have to show the professionalism so that you can let your guard down and be genuine.
I think after the second or third time I went showing with them, they're showing up in jeans and a t-shirt, and I was like, okay, we're now beyond they understand my professionalism, my expertise. I can start mirroring and matching how they're dressing as well. Obviously being still well put together and nicer than them, but
no, it's true. It's true.
And we're in a different market than Manhattan too out here.
Of course.
So.
Yeah. But you know what? One of the I'll say from both sides. One of my first luxury listings. This was probably 2006 or 7. I got a big apartment on the Upper West Side through my acupuncturist, who thought that I was the man because I wore a suit to acupuncture. He didn't know that I had never really, at that point, had big expensive listings. But he told this woman who was a Hollywood producer, and I wound up selling that property to a couple, 2 guys that came in, both wearing like short, ratty jean shorts and tank tops and flip-flops. But I knew enough high net worth people that I didn't discount them. That's another thing. Don't judge people, because guess who doesn't care what you think of them and how they're dressed? Someone who's sitting on $80 million, which these guys were. So, don't judge a book by its cover. And also, one of the top luxury agents in New York City, he rides a bicycle and he wears a white t-shirt to every appointment. So my roadmap is not the only roadmap, but there has to be some level of the professionalism so you can get away with whatever the other thing is, whatever makes you authentic. So, I don't mind wearing a jacket. I love, I have an entire closet full of, blazers that I actually enjoy. If I didn't, it wouldn't be natural for me. But if that's not what's natural for you, or the group of people that you're trying to get in with, so I always talk about this high net worth group of Indian finance guys that I got in with in the early 2000s. One of the best things that ever happened to me in my career. They like to go to really Euro kind of restaurants, and they like to go to clubs. And guess what I bought? Bought a couple really dark pairs of jeans and tight t-shirts, because it just was, they all were, that was what they were all doing, kind of that mirror and match. If I was wearing a blazer to the club, I would look like an idiot. If I was wearing a polo shirt to the club, I wouldn't have looked like I was in their group. So you do adjust a little bit, but you're not becoming a different person.
Yeah. Be who you are.
I think you touched on a really important part, though.
The best version of who you are.
Yeah. And then a little better.
Sorry.
Not to judge a book by its cover. Because I used to live in Midland, Texas, and, it's all oil out there. So everyone would come in like dirty pants, ripped t-shirts, hats on, like sweaty, whatever. And I worked at a jewelry store and they'd drop a cool $5,000 like it was nothing.
Yep.
Just because it was Tuesday, you know. And I think that was when I was like, oh, okay, I need to not assume anything about anybody. But the other side of that, like you said, is we're the professional and we're in the service part of that. So it's on us to dress that part, you know?
Yeah. No, definitely. So, I'll talk about real quick the service part. I mentioned the Ritz-Carlton before. My buddy Brady Sandal, he's one of the top luxury agents in our company. He's in Palm Springs, California. He used to work for Nordstrom, and he hires his team. He doesn't care if they've got real estate experience. He hires people that worked at Nordstrom or the Ritz-Carlton, places that really have a customer service element that's super high. High net worth people, this is what they're accustomed to. You've got to give them that type of service. But what do they do at the Ritz-Carlton? Are they knocking on your door every 5 minutes asking if you need something? No, they're a little bit more subdued. You can't be the high pressure person. You can't be pushing. And, it really, truly is a level of customer service that, it's very engaged, but it's zero pressure. I can't.
Well, and I think part of that too is like you saying not knocking on your door every minute, asking if you need anything. Part of that is being a step ahead and anticipating needs before they're spoken, which I think is what all of that really boils down to.
100%. Very well articulated.
For once. I did that just to make Dan laugh.
Any other questions? I mean, it doesn't even have to be on luxury, or just it could be on brand.
For you. You might. Is someone else talking? No. What is happening in the New York market now? Have you guys talked about that? Are you starting to see it come back a little bit? I know last time you talked, you were saying that you're kind of in a recession, of 3-4 years ago, and we're on the upswing.
Yeah. So, 2000 this is when this actually ties into luxury. From 2012, I would say, to 2016, the majority of my business was luxury. At least, 2 million, 3 million, 4 million, 5 million, maybe not the 100 million that you see on the news in New York, but not the $700,000 first time home buyer, not the $400,000 studio. I was mostly in a 2 million and up market. In 2016, the really high end started coming down. 2017, the luxury, even like the lower end luxury, really grinded to a halt. There was too much inventory. So we sort of switched to the sort of entry and middle market. The 500,000 to 1.5 was our focus because that's what was selling. Obviously, if there was a $5 million buyer, I was working more with high end buyers and more entry level sellers because that's what was selling. So 2018 and 2019, the whole market sort of started getting a little stuck, where if you weren't priced really, really well, you were sitting. We were doing a lot of business, but everything was harder. There was no order taking. We didn't open the door and have 10 offers like we did in 2015, 2016. So, when this happened, let's just say the start of 2020, January, February, we saw this crazy energy come back into the market. I had buyers of mine from Dubai, from LA, all over the world saying, oh, we think now's the time to buy. And they were all saying it at the same time. So I was like, wow, this is incredible. Then this happened. Everything sort of grinded to a halt. We're not even allowed to show real estate. We're not allowed into, most doorman buildings won't allow a real estate agent in. So we've actually had, some of our sellers shoot video of their property, and then we've edited and made videos. We actually got an accepted offer on something through a video in the West Village, $875,000. And then we got in Queens, a house that was a tear down, so the person could just drive by. We put that into contract. We had a closing. We've got a contract signed on something else. But for the most part, we're not putting our listings on, because why would you put a listing on right now? Our buyers are mostly on hold. I spoke to a European buyer on Friday who wants to buy something. He said, I want to find something that was 5 million before this for 4 million. I said, that might be a bit of a stretch, but developers were already giving 7% break anyway. So could we get another 7%? Can we see 15% with new development? Sure. Then I think when we're allowed to start showing property again, I think the first listings that you're going to see are going to be the people who lost their jobs, the people who decided they want to get out of the city, the people who are transferring, the people who realize they don't need to commute anymore. So we're going to see some pretty motivated sellers, and we're going to see some opportunistic buyers. So I would expect when we come out, there's going to be a big, quick drop in price, but then I think it's going to normalize a little bit as this gets further and further in people's memory. I was talking to a Compass agent that I'm doing a deal with yesterday. We were on the phone for a while. We're both saying, it really comes down to, and this is like, disease stuff rather than real estate stuff. If there's a second wave and the second wave is bigger than the first, I think that we see a longer term lowering of price in New York. But if people have very short attention spans, and New York City is always, like, especially we're talking about luxury, high net worth people, they want a place in New York, even if they don't live here. It's like a thing that they need to have. It's a gem that they need in their crown. And, I don't see New York. I mean, obviously, if there's a major recession out of this, then it's not just going to be New York, it's going to be everywhere. But all things equal, I think that there's going to be a lot of opportunity really quick. And then I think it normalizes a little bit.
Yeah, we're excited for those get out of New York City people up here in Connecticut. So send them our way.
Well, I mean, look at what we're doing here. I drove to Boston and back in the same day to teach negotiation. I don't know if I'd ever do that again now that we've got this. So, I think there's going to be a lot of people who realize they don't need to go to an office, or, I was talking to one of the biggest commercial leasing real estate agents in the city yesterday. It's actually a good friend of mine. And, he was saying he's already getting calls from people. How do we get out of our lease? How do we downsize our footprint? So, companies are certainly thinking maybe have business centers here in New York for meetings, important meetings, but maybe less big office space. So, I mean, you guys could certainly be the recipients in Connecticut.
Yeah, looking forward to that. I got to jump off here. Thank you for coming in, Katie. Thank you for letting me join here.
Good seeing you, Dan.
What's that?
I was like, how am I logged on twice? And then I figured it was you.
What?
It showed.
Okay.
It showed you.
How is my name changed? Oh,
I
weird.
changed it.
Oh, because I'm still under your Zoom thing. Got it. All right. Thanks, guys.
Yep. Take care.
Bye, Dan.
Does anyone else have
anybody else?
Any questions?
Yes, I do have question.
Okay.
Yes, I just wonder, in the luxury market, they have some off-market listing.
Do I have?
Yeah.
Do I have off market? Yeah. So I definitely know of sellers that would sell for a certain price. There's a lot of times when you're talking to luxury sellers, they're like, then it comes down to lack of urgency. They might say, if you could find us somebody, we don't want to put it on the market. We don't want people coming through our home. So I've actually marketed properties in Florida, New Jersey on my website, or even in New York, put it on my website, but they don't want it in the MLS. They don't want it on StreetEasy, Zillow, because they want a sniper approach as opposed to a machine gun approach. But obviously, our goal is to try to get it listed. So I had a listing a few years ago as a townhouse, very, really high price point. He wanted to do it off market, and we weren't getting any phone calls. And he was like, "Oh, but I thought you said you were going to reach out to your Keller Williams network." And I said, "Yes, that's one of many approaches to driving people to a property." So this is actually not a success story. This is a failure story. He didn't want to do it. he refused to list his property. He got foreclosed on. Maybe he should have listed it.
Yeah. So the percentage that is lower if they put off market in luxury market, right?
Yeah, if somebody doesn't need to sell, and they just want to sort of give you something in your tool belt that you can use in conversations with people, and maybe you have a conversation with a high net worth person that might be interested in that. Yeah, that definitely happens in luxury. Oftentimes, sometimes luxury transactions happen, they're handshakes between two people. They don't even have a real estate agent involved. Sometimes it's, come look at my property, or they might call in a real estate agent. I've had this happen to me before, where a client of mine's like, I think somebody in my building wants to buy this. And we'll say to them, I will manage the transaction for you for X amount of percent. I'll manage the transactions, so there are different types of deals that happen in luxury.
Thank you. That is very good story.
Great. Katie, anything else, or?
I don't have any more. Anybody else have any questions?
Awesome.
All right. Awesome. Seth, this was so good. Thank you.
No, my pleasure. And definitely, if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out. If there's anything any of your clients are looking to buy or sell in New York, let me know. And I will definitely, Katie knows I'm a resource for you guys if you need it.
Awesome. Great.
You're awesome.
All right. Thanks,
All right.
guys.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll talk to you later.
Bye.